China is now producing more than 3 times the clean energy of the United States, around 2,900 terawatt-hours compared to just 965 in America. The country once labeled the world's biggest polluter has turned the tables, moving ahead as the real driver of the future. Meanwhile, the US is still hooked on coal and oil, losing ground in the industries that will define the next century. Even Elon Musk has admitted he's stunned by how quickly America is falling behind. What's happening is enormous in scale. China is rolling out giant battery plants, building solar parks that cover entire landscapes, and financing renewable projects across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. This isn't just a domestic push, it's a global expansion of influence powered by clean energy. The picture looks very different in the United States. Under Trump, renewable subsidies were slashed, climate programs shut down, and wind and solar dismissed as a scam. Rather than positioning America for the future, the government doubled down on oil and coal, pushing the country further away from industries that are now reshaping global markets. And all of this is unfolding as the US dollar faces one of its weakest years in recent memory. The Federal Reserve is preparing another rate cut in September, a move that will put even more pressure on the currency. In this video, I'll break down how China managed to pull so far ahead, why Trump's policies are setting the US back, and what this shift means for the balance of power in the global economy. Let's begin with the United States. Under Donald Trump, clean energy wasn't just neglected, it was mocked. He repeatedly dismissed wind and solar as the scam of the century, even blaming them for high electricity prices in America. His administration rolled back subsidies, slashed research budgets, and created new hurdles for renewable projects. Years of progress that could have kept the US in the race for global leadership were undone almost overnight. What makes this more striking is the gap between promise and reality. Trump pledged that his policies, expanding oil drilling, cutting regulations, and keeping coal plants alive, would deliver cheaper electricity and abundant power. But the outcome has been the opposite. Energy costs across the country have climbed, not fallen. Families are opening utility bills that are higher than ever, and the grid remains dangerously exposed to sudden spikes in oil and gas prices. This vulnerability is colliding with another major shift. Demand for electricity is growing faster than at any point in recent history. A decade ago, the focus was on traditional consumption. Households, factories, cars. Today, there's a new force driving demand to unprecedented levels: artificial intelligence and cloud computing. Data centers are multiplying across the country, each one consuming as much power as a small city. Instead of preparing for this surge with a modern clean energy strategy, America is doubling down on fossil fuels, leaving its grid strained and its future uncertain. While America stalls, China has taken renewable energy to a level that is hard to ignore. The country has built solar farms so vast they're visible from space. In the Tengger Desert, a solar park stretches across more than 40 square kilometers, producing enough electricity for around 600,000 homes. At the Longyangxia Dam, solar panels are paired with hydropower in one of the world's most advanced hybrid systems. And Beijing isn't slowing down. Right now, China is constructing the largest solar farm on the planet, high on the Tibetan Plateau. It will cover an area roughly the size of Chicago, about 235 square miles, with over 7 million solar panels. Once finished, it will generate enough power for 5 million households. What makes this project even more remarkable is how it reshapes the environment around it. The panels reduce wind speeds and cut down dust storms. They trap moisture, helping grasslands recover in places that had been turning into desert. Farmers are grazing sheep beneath the rows of panels, creating land that produces both energy and food. It is not just clean electricity. It is ecological restoration and economic development rolled into one. Equally striking is the speed at which China is expanding. In just the first half of this year, it added more than 198 gigawatts of solar capacity and another 46 gigawatts of wind. That's more renewable power than some nations have built in their entire history, and it happened in a matter of months. For the first time in years, China's carbon emissions actually declined in 2025, even as its economy kept growing. Now compare that to the United States, America hasn't launched anything close to this scale in decades. Its biggest solar farms are far smaller, and new projects often get tangled in lawsuits, political infighting, or sudden cuts to government support. Under Donald Trump, entire clean energy programs were rolled back. Subsidies disappeared, research budgets were gutted, and dismissive comments about renewables made investors hesitate. While China unveils one record-breaking project after another, the US struggles to complete even modest upgrades. The gap is widening. In China, renewable energy is treated as a national priority, with long-term plans that move forward regardless of politics. In America, energy policy swings wildly depending on who is in power, making large-scale projects nearly impossible to sustain. The result is clear. One nation pressing forward with confidence, the other stuck in uncertainty. The Tibetan Plateau solar farm is more than an energy plant. It's proof of what can be achieved when resources, technology, and political will align. It also underscores how far behind the US has fallen. While American families cope with rising utility bills and a grid strained by artificial intelligence and cloud computing, China is locking in the clean power it will need for decades to come. And China isn't stopping with solar panels and wind turbines. It has already completed the world's largest pumped hydro storage plant in Hebei province, capable of powering Beijing during peak hours. On top of that, it's rapidly deploying grid-scale battery installations that release stored power when demand surges. In the United States, storage remains limited to a handful of pilot projects, another casualty of budget cuts and policy reversals under Trump's leadership. Transportation tells another part of this story. China has become the largest electric vehicle market on the planet. In 2024 alone, more than 9 million EVs were sold there, and for the first time in history, a single country passed the milestone of 1 million sales in just 1 month. To make this possible, China has rolled out more than 2.5 million charging stations, creating a network so vast it dwarfs anything seen elsewhere. The contrast with the United States is sharp. EV adoption remains sluggish, charging infrastructure is scattered, and under Trump's leadership, federal support was almost non-existent. He often dismissed electric cars as impractical, leaving the market to develop with little help. Meanwhile, Chinese automakers like BYD are not just dominating at home. They're exporting worldwide, expanding their market share and shaping global standards for the auto industry. This is also where Elon Musk enters the picture. His entire vision has always rested on sustainable energy. Solar power through Solar City, grid-scale storage with Tesla's Megapack, and electric vehicles built for a future powered by clean electricity. For Musk, renewables aren't a side project. They are the foundation of his business empire. Without abundant and affordable clean power, Tesla's expansion slows, SpaceX faces higher operating costs, and his AI venture xAI runs into limits on computing power. The problem is that while Musk is betting everything on clean energy, US policy under Trump is pushing in the opposite direction. Subsidies for renewables have been cut, incentives for batteries and solar dismantled, and the grid left vulnerable to rising fossil fuel costs. Musk finds himself caught between vision and reality, trying to build the infrastructure of the future in a country whose leadership is doubling down on the past. This conversation goes far beyond cars or household electricity bills. At its core, it's about global competitiveness. Artificial intelligence has become the new frontier of power. Whoever leads in AI will set the pace for the global economy, shape critical industries, and wield enormous geopolitical influence. But there's a catch. AI is incredibly energy hungry. Without abundant, scalable, and affordable clean electricity, no country can dominate this race. China sees that clearly. Alongside its massive investments in AI, it is building renewable energy projects large enough to power entire regions. Solar, wind, and hydro are being connected directly to the data centers and training facilities that drive its AI ambitions. The US, however, under Trump's policies, is locking itself into dependence on costly fossil fuels. That means American AI companies face higher energy bills, slower expansion, and the risk of losing ground just as the competition accelerates. The danger is obvious. Trump's approach to energy reflects the priorities of the last century, while the rest of the world is already moving into the next one, in the industries that will define the future. AI, cloud computing, advanced manufacturing. The advantage will belong to the country with the cheapest and most reliable clean power. Right now, that edge belongs to China. If the US continues down this path, rejecting renewables and cutting support for clean technology, it risks more than falling behind in energy. It risks losing leadership in AI altogether. And in the 21st century, falling behind in AI means losing leverage in global politics. This is why so many countries are turning to China. Across Africa, South America, and Asia, governments are buying Chinese solar panels, installing Chinese wind turbines, and importing fleets of Chinese EVs. Beijing isn't just exporting products. It's financing entire projects, from power plants to transmission lines, embedding its technology and standards abroad. The US once stood as the world's undisputed leader in innovation. Today, under policies that cling to oil and coal, it looks increasingly stuck in the past while others move ahead. The gap is no longer marginal. It has become enormous. The numbers highlight the trend. Chinese investment in Belt and Road green projects jumped from $4.4 billion last year to $5.7 billion in just the first half of 2025. These aren't abstract commitments. They translate into pipelines, factories, and solar farms being built right now across multiple continents. Each of these projects doubles as a geopolitical tool. Countries that once relied on US aid are now leaning on China for financing, technology, and long-term partnerships. Beijing isn't just selling hardware. It is exporting entire industries, along with the influence that comes with them. Here's the irony. Even as Trump dismisses renewables and slams China in speeches, America still depends on them. One of the biggest suppliers of solar panels to the US is Indonesia's PT Rek Solar, which shipped over $200 million worth of panels tariff-free in just 6 months. But look beneath the surface, and the company is majority controlled by China's Huzhou Zhongdian Solar. So while Washington talks tough about breaking free from Chinese influence, US buyers are still pouring money into the very supply chains Trump claims to resist. Every panel that arrives strengthens China's role in the global energy transition, even as the US government insists on clinging to coal and oil. And this dependence on China is playing out at the same time that the American dollar is facing serious pressure. At the Jackson Hole Symposium, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell hinted at what markets had already been expecting. The US economy is slowing, the labor market is softening, and interest rate cuts are now back on the table. He didn't commit to a move outright, but his tone was enough to set off immediate reactions. Treasury yields dropped, stock markets rallied, and the dollar slid sharply. Traders are now betting with near certainty, between 80 and 90% odds, that the Fed will cut rates by a quarter point as early as September, with more reductions likely through the end of the year. That shift has already been felt in global markets. The dollar has weakened against the euro, the pound, and the yen, while gold has surged as investors look for safer stores of value. A weaker dollar brings mixed consequences. Imports become more expensive, inflation risks climb, and global trade is disrupted. On the other hand, borrowers benefit from lower rates, and US exporters may find themselves slightly more competitive abroad. But taken together, it underscores a troubling picture. America is already losing ground in clean energy, and now its financial backbone, the dollar, is also under strain. Each policy decision made under Trump, from energy to trade to finance, carries a cost. The question is not whether there's a price to pay, but how much worse it can get if this path continues. So make sure you're subscribed, because in the weeks ahead, we'll keep breaking down how these shifts in energy, technology, and finance are reshaping the balance of power in the global economy.